Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for being here. We're going to get started. Our guest this morning, he is a humanitarian, an award-winning actor, best-selling author, entrepreneur. Currently, he stars in ABC's #1 television drama, The Good Doctor. He has starred in numerous television and film projects, including CSI New York, He Got Game, and Lackawanna Blues. He is a founder and chairman of the Black Wall Street app and digital wallet. He's on the board of directors of the National Black Bank Fund, named honorary national co-chair of the redevelopment of Black Wall Street Greenwood Chamber of Commerce, and served on the President's Council panel, having been appointed by President Barack Obama in 2011. He was a classmate of President Obama at Harvard Law School. He authored 4 New York Times bestsellers: Letters to a Young Brother, Letters to a Young Sister, Letters to an Incarcerated Brother, and The Conversation. And his award-winning book, The Wealth Cure, addresses ways to solve the racial wealth gap. Letters to a Young Brother also won several awards and was named the best book for young adults by the American Library Association in 2007. He has been recognized with 7 NAACP Image Awards, 4 of them for his writing. He's the founder of Manifest Your Destiny Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to empowering underserved youth through mentorship, scholarship, and grant programs, and has established the Pierce and Hill Harper Arts Foundation. Graduated magna cum laude from Brown University with a Bachelor of Arts degree and was named the valedictorian of his department. He then graduated with a JD from Harvard Law School, as well as with a master's degree in public administration with honors from the Kennedy School of Government. He holds honorary doctoral degrees from Howard University, Winston-Salem State University, Lemoyne Owen College, Westfield College, Dillard University, Philander Smith in Arkansas, you name it. As an investor and business owner, he owns a successful coffee franchise in downtown Detroit called the Roasting Plant. He's co-owner of the A-Frame Brands and the award-winning New Orleans hotel, the International House. Hill Harper is a racial justice champion and one who has used his voice and his resources to address equity. At the turn of the century, W.B. Du Bois and the Talented Tent treatise talked about the need for the black elite to rise up. And Hill Harper has been walking and answering the call of Du Bois. Let's welcome to the stage the one and only actor and humanitarian Hill Harper for my conversation with him.
Give it up for Bankole. That was the fastest introduction I've ever heard. That was fast.
All right, so this program is to celebrate a man who gave so much to us. I always call him an elder statesman of the civil rights movement, an anti-apartheid hero, someone who gave so much, used his position, his power, his access to do for his people. You have met Harry Belafonte, and that's a powerful photo of him in that calm posture and you making a point. I want to begin by asking you to reflect on the road that the elder statesman, Harry Belafonte, traveled, and how you see the work that you're doing perhaps reflected in some of the things that he started doing earlier in Hollywood.
Well, thank you for that. And seeing that photo definitely makes me emotional, because this conversation, to me, is so important, because we have to celebrate our heroes. We have to teach accurate history. And we can't allow people to erase our history and our heroes, which so many are attempting to do right now. And when we think about King Harry, we think about someone who sacrificed so much to try to help and elevate his community. He told me backstage at that event that he lost so many jobs because of the stances he took. He lost millions and millions and millions of dollars because of the stances he took. Yet he had to, because it was necessary. And this is one thing I want to say. He was very clear about what he wanted us to do, meaning he wanted people to fight. And he felt that folks weren't fighting. He felt that folks had good intention. He felt that folks would do the least rather than the most, meaning they would maybe or maybe not show up to vote. They would sit around and maybe or maybe not complain, but would they really take risk and make a sacrifice to actually change the community? And that's why he's just an incredible man.
And I want to explore that a little bit and also talk about your own journey. I've been using this phrase a lot, our long walk to freedom, and that's from the title of Nelson Mandela's book. I think we all are in this long walk to freedom. Harry Belafonte, there's a biblical inference, to whom much is given, much is expected. And he felt that way. From where you sit, do you, and the circle that you're in, do you feel that there is that realization that to whom much is given, much is expected, and that the black elite, those who have been endowed with the resource, with the talent, and the access, that they need to do more in the way Belafonte was able to do?
Well, certainly I believe folks need to do more, but I think that we make a potential mistake if we use terms like black elite, because it seems to let other folks off the hook. Dr. King said we're all tied together in a single garment of mutual destiny. That means my destiny is inextricably linked with yours, with yours, with yours, with yours. All of us are linked, and inextricably so. And so to the extent that we say, well, the change has to come through this lens or this group, or the change has to come through this lens, it means that we are not honoring how connected we all are. And if we start to understand the power of our connection, the power of collaboration, then we actually start to change things. And I often use physics as a metaphor for this. I mean, is there a physics professor in that? Is there somebody who dated a physics professor here? Just checking. Okay. Oh, you in the back? No. Physics tells us that to move a mass that's in stasis, so to move this object, we can all agree that right now this table's not moving, correct? Okay. To move this, what does physics tell us has to happen? Force of how much? Equal or greater to the mass. So therefore, if we want to solve a big problem like King Harry talks about, racial injustice, the wealth gap, systemic racism, all of these things that we want to solve, then we're going to need energy equal or greater to the problem. And we can all agree that it's a massive 400, 500, 600-year problem. So if we're going to solve it, it's going to take an amazing amount of energy or force.
So let's talk about the state that we're in, because the King Harry, elder statesman, was quite frustrated towards the end of his, as he neared the end of his life, because of what has happened and how he felt like the clock was turning backwards. And since we're in this physics analogy, Sir Isaac Newton, in Newton's third law of motion, said for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. And I think when we look at the civil rights movement, Douglas talked about answering thunder with thunder. Do you feel that we are in this moment where for everything that has been done to roll back the clock, that in fact there's a forceful response to maintain the gains that have been achieved by men like Harry Belafonte?
You hit it perfectly in two ways. First, let's bring it right here to Michigan. There's no question that King Harry would be appalled by the fact that for the first time in 57 years, there's not a black Democratic representative in Congress from Michigan. So you want to talk about things going backwards. It's happened on our watch, though. And then I also believe that if you actually look at what the so-called opposition has done in claiming the flag, in claiming the word freedom, in claiming the word patriot, and wrapping themselves in it, even claiming the word they're Proud Boys. How can systemic racism be, how can you be proud of that? But the point is that I believe that they actually looked at the civil rights movement to create their blueprint to grab all of this back. Because remember, when Harry Belafonte and Dr. King and John Lewis, Ambassador Young, and all of these folks, let's take for example, when Dr. King marched from Selma to Montgomery, hundreds of people carried small American flags. They had a massive American flag with them, and they got to the steps of the Capitol. They wanted the Confederate flag to come down, the American flag to go up. The civil rights movement wrapped themselves in the flag. And on our watch, we've given the flag away to Proud Boys. We have to grab it back. And the only way that's going to happen is doing what Harry called for, right? He called for us being radical and activists, not pacifists, not to sit back and complain and show up and just vote every once in a while, but to actually lean in collaboration with each other and do the work. And that's what I think he was most frustrated by. At least that's what he sort of told me that day that we were talking. He challenged me. He said, "You got to do more, Hill." And I'm like, I've written some books. I'm doing my thing. I'm doing the best I can. No, you have to do more. I said, I have my foundation. You have to do more. And in so doing, though, we give each other permission to do the same. When you rise and you fight, and I see it, I can model my behavior after you. But if I see you step back, then I step back. We follow each other's leads. And that's why we have to fight and fight even harder. And that's why I think his example is so important, because we can wrap ourselves in his example. You can show up, protest something, get arrested, and say, "Why'd you do it?" Harry Belafonte.
So, and as you're speaking, I'm thinking there's a word that kept ringing in my head: courage, which I think in many ways defined, his legacy. And when I talk to people, and I watched an interview you did several years ago when you were talking about why you wrote one of your books about young black men. And you said a publisher approached you and basically said, Hill, you're great, you're doing this, Harvard and all of that, but that's not what we think you should write about. I want to talk about courage in the space that you sit, because, I have followed your work from a distance for a very long time. And I don't see too many people in that space that you're in that are willing to say things that need to be said.
Well, it's tough when I get asked questions like that, because I actually got asked a question like that the other day that was talking about other people who come out of the entertainment industry or influencers, and they were asking, how come more of those folks aren't doing more? And I think it's a real slippery slope and problematic to sort of call that out, because I feel like we never know what's going on in someone else's shoes. We don't know what's happening in their life. We can only just attempt to lead by example and follow and hope that they come. We also can demand of them change. I do believe that we, as a community, too often give our money and our votes away for free. And so we end up supporting things that have nothing to do with our community best interest. The power of, as example, I'm not a super, I don't believe that artists should experience any type of censorship whatsoever, as an example. I believe artists should be able to make art. But if we voted with our dollars, we could influence the type of art that's mass distributed to us. Because if we continue to consume art that celebrates the murder of young black men, and young brothers have a running tape, because listen, there's some songs you just can't get out of your head. And if that's your running subconscious tape, what type of action do you take? I mean, I look back at that window of time where, for instance, and I know that Harry's daughter is big into music. She had me come to a concert she did and asked me to do a talk at one of her concerts, and she had all these amazing artists. And we talked about how he saw his power as an artist and what type of art he wanted to put out. He wanted to represent the best of a black man. And he wasn't the first. I mean, we have the Paul Robesons of the world. We had the Sidney Poitiers of the world. We had all of these folks that represented. You know, I got a chance to work with Billy D. Williams. You know, he represented this beautiful, strong, intelligent man. And so, but we had a time in music where hip-hop, as an example, was about celebration and power. You had Public Enemy, you had a Tribe Called Quest, you had De La Soul, you had Paris out of Oakland, you had all of these artists, but somehow, and watch this, it wasn't our doing, the record industry decided to promote a different type of music. Yet, here's the problem, we bought into it. They promoted it, and we bought into it. And then all of a sudden, and the thing is, this is the slippery slope. I'm not judging the artists who make that music. I'm judging us for allowing the record industry to pimp us for our dollar, feeding us stuff that's negative. It's a different thing. We have to recognize that we still have the power. We don't have to accept everything that's offered to us. And then if we're able to do that en masse or in collaboration, all of a sudden we can create change. We have enough energy or force to move something, to change a record industry, to change the way we think about ourselves, to change the wealth gap and our ownership levels, and all of the things that Harry Belafonte talked about continuously throughout his life, that, to your point, he got frustrated because he didn't see the change.
Yes, and you know, and I'm thinking as you're speaking is you talk to a lot of people who have given up because they've not seen any kind of change. They've given up, and they've noticed that people come up to them when they need support. They'll promise the sky, planet Jupiter, Mars, and everything, and then they disappear. And then 2 weeks before, you know, the next election, the emails start coming in again. And so forth. So it's like nothing. We're almost in this cycle of economic death. So how do you convince people who have given up on a system that they find not working for them? Now, let me be clear with a caveat. It's working with other communities. Because in other communities, they have a list. And when you come back asking for support, they go through the list. Did you fulfill this? Did you fulfill that? Before they wrap their arms around you. So how do you talk to people in our community who have given up on the system, believing that this is just a merry-go-round?
That's a great question. And we can tie it back to a time where I was involved in supporting my law school classmate attempting to get elected president. He was selling hope, change, and yes, we can. They had built, and we had built, an incredible infrastructure called OFA, Obama for America, because the fix was in for a different candidate. So they had to build a new structure outside of the Democratic Party system to win the primary. Most of us are old enough to remember this, okay?
I remember the fix wasn't in Michigan as well for the other candidate, but go ahead.
Exactly. So they built this apparatus called OFA, Obama for America. Here's the problem. And I put myself in there too, because I wasn't thinking about this either. So I'm not trying to say I was there and I had a all-knowing knowledge. I was part of the problem. Full disclosure. No one had planned, what do you do with all that energy after the victory? Everything was centered on, and it goes to your point, everything was centered on winning. And then as soon as the victory happened, folks were ready to show back up at those offices again. And they would have gone, we could have just said, okay, this week we're going to clean the park. Next week we're going to read to second graders. The next week we're going to, et cetera, et cetera. People were ready to work together and continue the work. The problem is that the focus was on the victory, and then there was no apparatus after that. It's the difference between playing chess and playing checkers. And we tend to play checkers too much, one-offs. And then we allow politicians to show up, make promises, disappear. We allow them to do that. And so one thing that has to be, we have to change. Our democracy is crumbling. We have to make specific changes that allow for transparency and accountability. How do you do that? The technology exists. Most people don't know this, that the vast majority, almost every congressperson who sits in Capitol Hill spends 4 to 6 hours a day on the people's time. Let's say the people's time is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. The people, we pay their bills, right? We pay taxes. They spend 4 to 6 hours a day raising money for their next office. And people say, well, how come Congress is so inefficient? Because they ain't working. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. But they are working in a different way. They're raising a ton of money for the next race. So we've allowed democracy become about maintenance of power. These individuals aren't there to represent people. They're there to maintain their seat. It's a different mindset. And that fundamentally is the problem. And that holds for both political parties. Okay? And so we have to understand our power, again, and then hold folks, to your point, accountable, which we do not. And then also establish a level of transparency and access, which we do not have. So how do you fix that? You demand access.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's go in that space, because as I'm listening to you, and you're right, but it's almost as if it's the misnomer for someone from your space to say we need accountability. And I always say charity begins at home. And I think people in this room know what I'm talking about. Let's put the Democratic Party on the spot right away. You know, we got folk who say, well, you know, it's okay for you to aspire to this, but you can't aspire to that. So it's almost as if there's a caste system. You know, and it's reflected in the writings of Isabel Wilkerson, The Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent. I'll give an example. I remember when Thomas Perez, former Labor Secretary, was the head of the DNC. There was this big mutiny within the DNC from black women who said, we don't never get promoted within the DNC. We're always called in to mop the floor. You know, we're called into the open house to put the tables together. We're not the ones on the high-profile stage. We're not the one texting the high-profile folk and asking for resources. They're always having us like a workhorse and so forth. So it's almost as if there's a caste system that says you have to be involved in the party, but your rise has to be limited by a certain aspiration. So when you are saying we need to take back the power, how do you do that, though? Because there is going to be a resistance. There's always a resistance, even from those who say they love black folk.
The resistance, again, is from folks who don't want to see people in elected office that don't owe them any favors. Because you can maintain your power even when you're not sitting in the seat if the person who's sitting in the seat owes you their career. That's how you maintain lifetime power, right? And we have to just look how many people get placed in seats. You think that that's just because they like them or they like the way their breath smells. This is about power maintenance. And so, but the beautiful thing is that, and this is the hard thing, it's the beautiful thing, but also the hard thing, is that you just mentioned a couple questions ago that there's so many people who are checking out. And they're saying, you know what, I don't see change happening. I don't see anything I don't think, why should I even participate? The thing is that that's what they want you to feel. Because when there's low voter turnout, incumbents win. When there's high voter turnout, new people win. So the more they can suppress the vote, the more they can suppress people thinking that they don't have the power, the more they can keep voter turnout down and they can maintain it. And so, therefore, the way we actually fight back is organize. We have to be willing to participate in groups of organization, get involved in different verticals, whatever your passion is or whatever your issue you're passionate about. There are people there that want to do work with you. And then once you're organized, you can start getting your elbows out. We're seeing them have a strategic dismantling of unions as example. Unions were so good at organizing for so long, and then they said, oh, you know what, unions are getting a little too good at this. We need to stop them. And so now we're down to 6% in terms of labor, in terms of unions, which is atrocious. And we need to support unions. That's why I was on a picket line with the U.S. Postal Service workers a couple weeks ago. I was on a UAW picket line. We have to show up for our union members, you know, because demanding organized pay, organized working conditions that are healthy, and all of the things that come, you can only do that if you are organized. And so we have to support our unions steadfastly. I'm a union member, and I was elected to the national board of my union, and you start to realize that there are so many forces that want to stop people from organizing. And we can organize. If we can organize, we then grab the power back.
I had the opportunity in 2006 to interview Elder Harry Belafonte at Gary, Indiana, at the 40th anniversary of the National Black People's Unity Convention. And he said that labor has to do more, like he told you, that he feels like people are giving up the reins of power. And there has to be this fierce urgency. And he recited what, you know, has been widely reported and written in books towards the end of Dr. King's life, spending time in Mr. Belafonte's apartment in New York, you know, and Dr. King said, we're integrating into a burning house. And Harry asked Dr. King a Socratic question, what must we do? And King, he said, retorted back and said, we need more firemen. My question to you is, though, what can we do if we have to use that analogy to define where the modern black freedom struggle is today? What do we need to do to create more firemen, both within and outside of politics?
That's a great question. The way you put it is fantastic. Where it makes my head go is a sobering thought that the opposition has been and is out-energying us. They're louder, they're more organized. Resources means energy. But at the end, in so many ways, a day doesn't go by when you don't see a rally of the new KKK, the Proud Boys, the MAGA hats. They're showing up everywhere, and they're relentless. So when I hear the term firemen or firewomen, fire is energy to me. And we got to get on fire. And it's not good enough to get on fire catching the Holy Ghost dancing up and down church aisles. As beautiful as that is, I love singing it. And sometimes I want to fall out too. We got to be willing to show up everywhere. And the other piece is, and this is critical, y'all, support each other when they come after us. Because what they're very good at is taking us down one at a time. And I so often see someone say, they see something bad happen, or they say something bad, or a headline runs bad about somebody that was placed. They go, I'm glad that wasn't me. Rather than say, rather than stand up and say, you can't come after him or her like that. They're part of our community. They've been here for a while. I don't know what you're talking about, but this is the narrative that I'm putting forth, because all of that stuff is, what we don't realize is it's placed. It's paid for. Those headlines are paid for. Media today, up and down, except Bankole, is paid for. I didn't want to get in trouble up here. I was like, hey, man, I ain't paid for. That's right. But it's all paid for. And that way, if someone comes after Judge right here, only African-American bankruptcy judge in the state of Michigan, if someone comes after him, who's going to be there to say, no, you come after him, you're coming after me? And what's crazy is they do that. We need to do that. They do that all. I mean, my man has 33 indictments.
37
plus
to be exact.
37 plus a whole bunch
And
more
he's
to
probably
come
in court right now as we're speaking. Go ahead.
Yet they out there protesting, supporting him. They're not running away, they're running towards. We need to do that with and for each other, because it'll give them pause for coming at the next person. It'll say, I know we're going to place this article about so and such, but let's not do that, because they're going to come after us, and they're going to. And the beautiful thing about Michigan is what? Michigan is a red state until this community votes. And it's not until Wayne County reports that a Democrat can ever win a statewide election in Michigan. So if you want to know how much power you have, just look at that. And then you call the shots. You start to say, this is who we want. That's who we want. This is what we're doing. And if we don't get that, come November, we may stay home. And if we stay home, you lose either way. So you're going to have to listen to Wayne County. We need to start puffing our chest out.
So that's a nice segue into, it's a nice segue into the unity question here, which was very central for Harry Belafonte and others. Despite individual personal differences, these leaders had a bigger mission. You know, it said that there was some sort of a skirmish between Thurgood Marshall and Dr. King, but it never made the front page of the New York Times. It never made the front page of the Detroit News or the Washington Post. Despite the personal, I don't like the way Mildred Gaddis talked about me. She's here in the audience. I don't like the way Bankole said, but there's a bigger mission here, because, in the words of the late Black Prince Julian Bond, there's a prize. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. How do we, from where you sit, what needs to happen to create that unity? Eugene Robinson of the Washington Post wrote this book about the disintegration of Black America, just the different facets we have. So there is a disintegration. I mean, no matter how much we preach unity, there is some sort of a disunity. And those outside, whether it's the conservative apparatus or the democratic apparatus, they feed into that. They make their calls into our community. Did you hear what Mildred said? Did you hear what Bankole said? Oh, yeah, I don't agree with Mildred. I don't agree with Bankole. That's right, I don't like Hill Harper. They feed into that. How do we create a unity pack here where the larger goal is uplifting Black humanity? whether you like Hill Harper or not, whether you like Bankole Thompson or not, whether you don't, how do you do that?
That is a great question, and it's something that I've been talking about for a long time, particularly from the lens of black men and black women. It seems somehow we've gotten to a place where we're not even friends anymore. You have all these organizations that are black female organizations, then young women organizations, et cetera. Then you have black male organizations, young black male organizations. I wrote my book, The Conversation, was all about how do we rebuild black men and black women talking to each other, having the conversation, because they've done it very well. They've strategically separated us, even in terms of legislation. I mean, if we look back at legislation around welfare and welfare acts, if there was a two-parent household, the money was less. So therefore, it was in our community, the male was incentivized to leave the home. That's legislation, right? And so therefore, if you think about systemic ways that you can break up a community, the first way is you break up the family. 3 out of 4 of our young people are being raised by single mothers. The idea of us, we have to be in communication with each other, and we have to accept our common goals and work together. And so how do we do that? My answer goes back to what I just said. I want to support you unequivocally. Whatever you're doing, I want to have your back on it. Folks DM me stuff all the time. Where's the sister who talked to me as we were walking in about the Black Wall Street thing that's happening on July 21st? Stand up real quick. So as I was walking in, she said, hey, there's a thing happening, Canvas Marshes, right near your coffee shop. Are you in? And the answer is, I'm in. We have to be in with each other. She's organizing something. We have to support what she's organizing. I'm sure you're organizing something. You're organizing. We have to support each other. And it's not about, oh, this is about black women, this is about black men, this is about whoever. This is about folks who got privilege, or these are the educated folks, or these are the Divine Nine. And you just mentioned Thurgood Marshall and Dr. King were arguing. They're both from my fraternity, Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, so they're probably just arguing about fraternity business. Just saying.
That's probably a nice way to put it.
There you go. So at the end of the day, though, we all are tied together in a single garment of mutual destiny. And the problem with many, what happens in our community is that we can agree on 9 things, disagree on 1, and you'll be like, I ain't working with that person. Where what they do, all they need to do is agree on 1. They can disagree on 9 and be like, I'm going to ignore the other 9, but I'm going to show up because we're going to get this one thing done. And so we have to get out of that position that we've been fed by other people, that if we don't completely agree on every little thing, then that's somebody I can't work with. And my whole thing is that if you believe in civil rights, if you believe in human rights, if you believe in justice, if you believe in democracy, if you believe in liberty, if you believe in equity for all, if you believe in everybody should have access to quality health care, if you believe that you value kids more than you value your ability to own a weapon of mass murder, if you believe in just human rights, then we can work together. I don't care where you're from. I don't care how much melanin or melanin challenged you may be. I don't care what religion you may have or whatever, however you brought. None of that matters if we're talking about uplifting humanity. And I fundamentally believe that's what Harry Belafonte was about.
And I'm going to open this to get some quick questions from the audience here as well. And when it's time to ask questions, please, no editorials or commentaries. Just ask a question, period. So we keep this going. He's in a tight schedule. We're all in a tight schedule here. And I need to ask you this. When you look at the life of Harry Belafonte, it's a powerful, defiant statement against the racist caste system, which still exists today, that we can only go so far, and we can only do so much, that certain things are not deserving of us. And given where you are, talk about the caste system here and how you've been able to rise above that despite. Because the way you're speaking and the things that you've been able to do obviously is the anathema or the antithesis to the caste system.
Well, you mentioned Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste, which I recommend everybody in here read. It is genius, and it is wonderful. It's filled with so much incredible history. At the beginning of that book, she mentions the story of August Landesman. I hope I'm not messing up the name, but I believe his name is August Landesman. And there's this very powerful picture of pre-Nazi Germany, pre-annihilation, pre-inoculation, pre-internment camps, where they were getting people to slowly buy in to the doctrine of the Third Reich. And he was dating a Jewish woman, and in this amazing picture, everybody has their hand up, "Hi, Hitler," and he has his arms crossed. Everybody. And he was the only one. Sometimes you have to be the only one, even though it seems everyone's headed a different direction. You have to stand in truth and in justice, and you have to do that work. And so that's, to me, the challenge, right? Because we don't have to do it the same way everybody else has done it in the past, but we have to root ourselves in what is true and what is just and what is right, and then be steadfast in it. Because what starts to happen, if you're the only one, then there'll be a second, then there'll be a third, and it'll seem frustrating, then there'll be a fourth. The way I've attempted to do it is just do it by example. And I've made so many mistakes, and I continue to make mistakes, and I will always make mistakes. And that's why, y'all, please, if and when you see me making my mistakes, reach out and be, hey, Brother Harper, that was not, that wasn't good. Do this. Rather than what we tend to do is we go public and we feed into their narrative and bring somebody down publicly rather than pulling their chain and like, yo, man, hey, you should talk to so-and-such because so-and-such is upset because this happened, because somebody that you work with did that. That's a private conversation that can get solved privately, and all of a sudden you're back in line, rather than going on Twitter and then saying such and such disrespected such and such, and then they take that and post that and repost it. Because you got to remember, everything, for instance, online is paid for as well, right? You can boost anything. Be like, wow, that got 100,000 retweets. It got 100,000 retweets because someone paid for it to be retweeted, right? And so something that looks like it's a trend is only created by that money and power piece. So how do we fight against it? Again, we fight against it by being accessible to each other, transparent, and working together. This inspires me. It's standing room only in here, and we're talking about something important like Harry Belafonte. That means folks are conscious. This amount of people can change this city, can change this state, and can change this country. Because all we do is multiply it.
You wrote a book on the incarcerated, and after this, we'll get to the audience here on the incarcerated. And one of the things that I greatly admired about Harry Belafonte was, even in his 90s, he was in the penitentiary talking to young brothers and young sisters. Tell me about, when you go around the country talking to young people, what is the common denominator of the conversation that keeps coming? What's the recurrence? What are you hearing?
You know, I ended up working in the prison system very organically. My father was a psychiatrist who worked in the prison system. We were in Fort Madison, Iowa, which is a small town right on the Mississippi River in southeastern corner of Iowa. And that's where I lived the first number of years. My grandfather had a farm there, his father, an 80-acre farm at Fort Madison. My father worked in the prison there. Prison is old, big brick prison, looks like Jackson here. And maybe that's why, that's why I moved here. And that's why this area resonated with me so much, because there's a combination of this Midwestern kind of kindness that's here, but at the same time, there's a grit that resonates where I lived in Brooklyn. So it's almost like Detroit's a mix of Iowa and Brooklyn, I guess. I don't know. But whatever that is, it fits and feels right. For me, we are 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's inmates. The majority are Black, brown, Latino individuals. But the one thing that almost everyone has in common who is incarcerated in this country is that they're poor. And poverty and economic fragility is basically a mark for being terrorized by the mass incarceration system. It becomes a revolving door. And the work that I've been able to do in that comes from this idea of you're there completely unfairly. You're there because of your economic circumstance. The fact that we know that if there's no funding for early childhood education and early childhood literacy, that's just a straight pipeline to prison. We can tie illiteracy rates, dropout rates to incarceration rates. It doesn't take a brilliant person to understand those ties and those links. Yet there is zero political will to solve that. And it's not complicated. What is it? It's paying teachers more than you pay correctional officers, which in most states, correctional officers make more than teachers, okay? It is finding a way to do early childhood care and early childhood education. Again, no will, no political will, no force, no power. And so the work that I do in the prisons is all about that work, because at the end of the day, and this is the best story, I was doing it was right outside of Baltimore. It was a youth prison for the most hardened offenders, violent, murder, etc. And I was doing a little seminar with some young men, and there was one brother who was like yoked up, had so much armor, on. And I looked him in the eye, we're about this far away, and I said, you know what? Before I finish, I'm gonna give you a hug. And he looked at me, he said, no, N-word, MF, you ain't going to effing touch me. And if you effing touch me, I will kill you. And I said, no, you're wrong. I'm gonna give you a hug. And then he said, no, I'm blah, 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 blah. And then went on back and forth, and we had our whole seminar. And at the end, I go up to him. He stands up. He's bigger than me. And I said, I'm going to hug you because I love you. And I hugged him. And I felt him go like this. And so to answer your question, fundamentally, not even talking about issues, legislation, it's about love, y'all. And either you love people or you don't. People can sense whether you love them or not. We have great intuition. And so if we show up and we start loving on each other and love each other, then we would change the mass incarceration system. If we actually loved each other, we would change our education system. If we loved each other, we would change our so-called democratic system and the way that it is structured. We have to get to the love and then let the love empower the work. And if we do that, we will see significant change.
All right, so get your questions ready. We have 15 minutes left for this entire forum. Get your questions ready. Mr. Harper or Brother Hill.
Thank you.
At Harvard
Law School. There's a
School.
mic over there. There's mics. Oh, there's.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, at Harvard Law School, let's get you ready. At Harvard Law School with former President Barack Obama, who was the smartest in that class?
There's. I felt sorry.
Tell the truth,
I
though.
felt sorry for Barack. I really did. Because I went to Harvard Law School. I'd won a Sloan Fellowship, so I was doing a joint degree at Harvard Law School and the Kennedy School of Government. And I was coming straight from Brown University. I was 21 or 22 years old. And in my same class was this old man, almost 30 years old. It was sad. I was like, you way off track, brother. You almost 30 years old coming back to school. Man. And so I really, you know, I looked up to him, not just because he's taller than me. All joking aside, I do joke with him and say, man, I'm the one with the degree in government. You know.
All right.
But I do think I got better grades than him. I never saw his transcript.
I'll have to verify.
But I graduated cum laude. I think he graduated thank you laude.
All right. Let's go with now. Remember this: no commentaries, no editorials. Please just get to the questions so I can get as many questions as possible within these 15 minutes. Please.
I remember what you said, and thank you. I'm going to be very quick. He touched on what I wanted to speak about, which was love, and I don't actually have a question. I have a challenge. I don't see a lot of young people in here. I want y'all to go home and love on somebody in your family. We need to change the narrative at home. Love on someone. Do a favor for somebody you don't know. This week, this month, hug somebody, like he said, but let's get this love spreaded.
All right.
all I
Thank
gotta
you.
say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Dr. Tammy Anderson. I work here for the college at District Student Services. Thank you for being here. So my question for you is, Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter? What say you?
That is a false choice, in my opinion, right? Because it creates a false dichotomy. Because things can be both and, not one or the other, or. And so Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. They both matter. And that's the beautiful thing. If you celebrate humanity and if you celebrate our common humanity and love, then you're going to support anyone who has suffered from some measure of injustice. And that's why I mentioned the idea of poverty around mass incarceration, because there are a lot of white folks in prison, but the vast majority of them are poor, right? And undereducated, and lack of financial and economic opportunity. And so those are the telling factors of what happens if we allow a system to grow that preys on poor people. And so all those people matter. And that's how and why we need to not buy into other people's definitions of language. Because what starts to happen is you start to inherit how they want to define an issue. I don't want to even own someone else's term, right? I want us to create our own terms for what we believe we want to see happen, right? And so certainly a great term that caught fire, Black Lives Matter, was fundamentally about what? It was fundamentally about wanting to end any measure of police brutality, right? And then somebody comes up with a term to try to flip it, and then someone else flips the term, and then someone takes the term woke, and then they try to flip that term, and then someone takes the term around police funding, and they flip that term, and then it becomes about term flipping and code switching and all of that, rather than about actually trying to solve a problem. So if we have to create new language and not buy in, that's why earlier today you heard me say the words weapons of mass murder. I don't want to buy into what they call a quote-unquote gun. Because you know what? I did well in my constitutional law class. I know what the Second Amendment says. And if we allow the NRA and their billions of dollars to define for us what a gun is and what a gun isn't, by the way they term it, back when they said a right to bear arms, An arm was a musket. You had to load it for 3 minutes and then would shoot once. It wasn't a high mag load assault weapon. So how we define something matters, and how we buy into language matters. And I think that I attempt to be as careful as possible to not buy into other people's language and trying to inherit it.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's next question. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Brandon Keys. I'm 39. I'm a black dad. So,
Fantastic.
all right. Question for you. You talked about supporting each other, loving one another, and firemen, right? I'm a veteran. I'm a combat veteran. When I hear firemen, I don't really think firefighters. I think fire teams. And so when we talk about what's happening in the black community and the enemy is real. They use violence. They use violence not just as a threat, but they use it as a method. In our community, we're always talking about love and support and forgiveness. But how are we really going to affect change or puff our chest out if we're not really to bust you in the mouth? How do we really have a bite without teeth? So in your opinion, is there a time and a place and an ability to organize, and I don't want to say use the threat of violence, but the reality of defense of one another and each other?
Thank you.
I think that there's a place for all people showing up in the way that they believe is the best way for them to exercise their power. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. There's a book that I read when I was either coming out of high school or I was in college. It was by a writer named Dan Millman called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And basically, to break that book down, it was about how do you show up in life with a warrior spirit, but also understand that peace and love can also be just as powerful as war, okay? And so therefore, that really resonated with me, and I always said I want to be a peaceful warrior. I want to have that level of energy, but that's me. That doesn't mean that someone else, when the Black Panther Party carried weapons around the streets of Oakland and showed up to protect, when my buddy here in Detroit, who we have to support his organization, New Era Detroit, Zeke Williams, they show up when there's a violent act that happens at a gas station, that happens on a street, and they're like, we're going to lock down this neighborhood because we're not going to allow it to happen on our watch. Through the very clear intimidation and threat of reciprocal violence, okay, everybody has their own part to play and the way they can show up best. I believe that. And so if the way that folks organize to show up best, for instance, the way New Era does it versus the way another organization or a church organization does it, both are fine. It kind of goes back to that thing. It's not a binary choice. Both are fine and both are okay as long as they're rooted fundamentally in justice, truth, and wanting to preserve our community in a way that makes sense. And so what I think the biggest challenge, though, is organizing folks that feel the same way, that want to do the same work. How do you find those people, and then how do you bring them together? I've been working on something I can talk about in a minute around that issue, because that's really the challenge, is that I don't want you out there by yourself puffing your chest out, because then you're vulnerable. I want you out there in a group that won't allow something to happen to you. How do we find that group and organize that group? And that's, to me, the thing we have to answer. So it's a yes and answer.
All right, I'll take 3 more questions from the audience.
Mr. Thomas, we have one right here.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is more of an urgent plea. Since we have all the right people in the right place here, we desperately need volunteers for the MLK Freedom Wall, Saturday, June 24th. The last training meeting is going to be here this Saturday. So please, ask your friends, ask your family. We want this to be a successful walk down Woodward, and we desperately need your help. Volunteers is needed. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the next question. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you for taking my question. I am a fan of Bankole and also Mr. Hill Harper. If I may, I see Malisha Baz in the audience. Just wanted to say hello. I would like to know if you would come to my community. I'm the vice president of a historical association in Detroit. And also I'm part of Durfee Innovative Society, their advisory council. And we are trying to come together as well. But everything that you said here today, if I could have a recording of it, I could play it at our association meeting and then have you guys come out and speak as well. Our community is 62 families in just my 32-block radius. And then across the side, Durfee, they're probably 2,000 or better. So if you guys could come out.
I'm going to be at Durfee tonight. They asked me to come speak to the
Hallelujah.
youth at the Empower organization
Yes, sir.
tonight. So I'll be there tonight. And also what I'm attempting to do at Durfee, because I always say this, you know, I can show you better than I can tell you.
Yes, sir.
What we're trying to do at Durfee is my coffee shop. I always felt that coffee was an opportunity to create jobs, an opportunity, and also learn. If you learn to be a barista, that's a tradable skill. You can go anywhere in the world and work. So I created an organization called Opportunity Roasters. So we're looking at using, giving ownership of this coffee shop to the students and letting them operate a coffee shop called Opportunity Roasters in the Durfee building. We're hoping to get that up by the fall so that they can learn, they can earn, and they can own. And so hopefully that's going to happen, and we're figuring it out. So what's happening at Durfee is great, and I'll be there tonight.
Great. I'll see you there.
All right, let me take two more questions. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tanae Hankins, and I want to thank you for this forum because all three parties, I've loved you all for years. My question is, you said you will help, and we have to support each other. I am founder of an organization called Biz to Biz Match Productions, as well as chair of YouVotedNowWhat.com. What we're putting together in the fourth quarter is a forum to bring young people together with our elders, which is very apropos to this tribute to Harry Belafonte. My uncle, who's just turned 89, wanted to make it, but he couldn't. And we are going to match, our motto is collaboration for power and profit. We're going to match our elders with young people. We have gas station owners, business owners who want to pass down this knowledge and the heritage and also teach us how to be like it was during the civil rights movement. I remember being young. I wasn't old enough to go on the marches with my older siblings, but I got excited because I was in the kitchen helping my mother fry the chicken to pack the lunches and all of that type of stuff. We were involved from stem to stern, doctors, lawyers, no matter what you did, and this is what we're trying to do. Will you support us? How do we get in touch with you all and get feedback on how to make this event or this movement more successful? Thank you.
All right.
Okay, let me say this. Take out your phones right now. And this is what I'm talking about. Transparency, accountability, etc. 313-314-1928. Text me. Do not call that number, please. Text that number, 313-314-1928. And I will do my best. I can't respond to everything really super quickly all the time because it's a lot of text, but do my best to be responsive in terms of helping folks out in whatever way. You can also DM me. And then also Rick Blocker. Where's Rick? Rick Blocker. He was here. I don't know. He and I work together. You can also reach him as a way to connect. I work very closely with Stephanie Kreider. All my people left. They done left. She was sitting right here. Oh, she's setting up a table in the back. Okay, so there'll be a table in the back as well. Put your email in there, because one thing I'm launching, and this is what I was going to mention to the brother. So I'm going to launch 501c4 called Choose Michigan. And it's going to have multiple silos of work around education, incarceration, healthcare, et cetera. That whatever folks' issues are, they can be a part of a group, because what you start to see is that you get into these websites, maybe you're interested in a healthcare issue or an education issue, but you're in there by yourself, and then you have to try to go to some other social forum to figure out, well, who's doing this? Then you got to show up to something like this and figure out who's doing that. And so the frustration for me has been that I came here in 2016 after I adopted my son and bought my house here and opened up the business, but the richness in the fullness of this state is dwindling. We're 49th out of 50 in growth in the country. We need more folks to choose Michigan like I did. We need more businesses to choose Michigan. We need more people coming here, not leaving. So many of our graduates from great schools like this, I was talking to the chancellor,
Dr. Ivory.
Dr. Ivory, who's incredible, and I said, he said, Hill, we're training folks really well. I said, well, where do they work? They said they're going to Nevada, New Mexico, et cetera. People are coming here, finding talent, and taking them like LeBron to South Beach. We have to create an ecosystem here that retains and stops the brain drain, that brings businesses here. And so the way we do that, I believe, is showing force and organizing and solving real problems that exist here. So therefore, text me your email, text me the issues that you care about, and then we will circle back with you once we get this platform launched called Choose Michigan that hopefully will organize folks on a platform that allow people to do the work that you were talking about and everyone else has been talking about.
All right, let me do this. I'll just invoke the moderator's privilege and just have 2 more questions. Let's go ahead with your question, and I'll have you have the last question.
Hello, thank you, Bankole and Hill Harper. Thank you for being here. You may have just answered my question, because what I wanted to ask you about was the fact that you say we do need to work together. And you mentioned how a young lady invited you to an event, at Campus Martius, and the lady before me was saying how she had something going on. And I wanted to know, how do we know what's going on, and how do we know what to get involved in? Because a lot of things we don't know about, and we hear about by word of mouth, and we just don't know. So I wanted to know, is this platform that you're talking about, is that going to be like a single source that we can go to and find out what's going on? Because then it would be easier if we had a single resource, a place that we can go to, maybe online or something, and say, oh, this is going on, or this is happening, or something like that.
Yes, that's exactly it. The goal is to create a platform where folks who want to solve specific issues, and then putting out news and information, et cetera. The idea is that we all have these social platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or Instagram, et cetera. Even though there are billions of people on those platforms, most of us follow 100, 200, 300 people. And so therefore, we end up recirculating, to your point, the same information with the same circle of folk, even though there's another circle over here that may be doing something that you could be just as interested in. And we hope to create an ecosystem where folks can connect and actually empower each other. That's the goal. Rick Blocker I know he has a sign-up sheet. There he is. And Stephanie Kreider, you can also put your email there, because that helps us as well, because we'll be able to stay connected in a way that we can drive a car together forward and work together. And the idea is you create an ecosystem like that, it starts to become self-led, meaning user-generated. It's not about, oh, Hill Harper put together this thing and he's setting this thing up. No, it's about, if we build the ecosystem, people then come on it and start taking leadership roles on it. They become the organizers, because historically that's what's actually happened, and that's certainly what's happened Black women have led most of our movements, right? Oftentimes behind the scenes. But this is a way to use technology to elevate people's voices and to let people connect with each other so we can have mass movements. If it's an issue that we all care about, whoever gets in that silo around mass incarceration, let's work that. So,
let's go with the final question right here. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Bankole, and thank you, Hill. I'm very appreciative. I have a teacher's voice, but I see you trying to hand the mic. I'm very appreciative because what I've heard today is movement language. And organized movement language, when you mention a platform, sounds similar to the Stride model out of Cincinnati, but we very much need it because I think you called it Michigan and the name is your name, but certainly in Detroit, and as you mentioned, Wayne County, I think it's been divided on purpose. I think those who are willing to fight and become warriors against the dismantling of our schools, fair and equitable auto insurance, mass incarceration, are often those fires are put out because we have a co-opted economy in politics here that will have people that should be lined up in rank and file. So we're ordering someone that is representing our best interest, but when they pay somebody $1,000 here, $500 here, really pennies on a dollar, to say that they're going to line up behind somebody who really is a Republican that is masked in a Democratic suit or on the ticket as a Democrat. How do we build enough energy to fight against that ignorance that exists in our own community in what I call cesspool economy, to know $500, $1,000 is not worth it, that they gave that to you to be quiet on the fact that the census was wrong. It was wrong before they're saying it's wrong.
Yes.
It was wrong. It was wrong before they're saying yes now. And so the energy that it takes to keep fighting, despite knowing that I'm fighting my enemy on the outside and my enemy within, is very hard. So I'm inspired by what I've heard today. This can't be the last one, Bankole. It has to become a movement. It has to become a movement. So that's my word.
hey, listen, all I know is from now on, you and I go everywhere together. You talk about black men and black women working together. I'm just going to grab on you and we go together. That's it. But without question, y'all, here's the deal. The solutions lie in us. In this room, we got over 100 people in this room. We can amplify this. Because if, for instance, if each person here recruited 20 or 30 folk, and then those 20 or 30 each recruited 20 or 30, all of a sudden you have a movement just in 3 steps that could control every election in the state of Michigan, that could control ultimately who sits in positions of power in D.C., in Lansing, and across the country. Yet we ultimately don't do that work, but we can. And let's do it together, and let's support each other and do the work. And I'm just so inspired by everybody, and thank you for that. That level of energy that we just saw is the level of energy we need to show up with. And that's it.
2 more quick questions from me here.
Oh, God.
No.
She just said we're going to do it again. Save those 2.
We will. But two quick questions. One is, I'll end with the community college question because I want you to address that. That's very serious.
Yes.
Because this place is one of the last vestiges in terms of educational empowerment for a number of reasons. But last year, I gave a keynote lecture for Black History at your alma mater, Brown University. And it was around the legacy of slavery, racial justice. And as you're talking about that, I was just listening that Brown, Harvard, a lot of institutions benefited from slavery. And the question of reparatory justice is at the forefront of the modern Black freedom struggle. And we don't hear too many people in very powerful places speak about that. Talk about the essence of keeping that conversation at the forefront of any effort that seeks to address racial justice.
Well, the conversation usually revolves around economics, and we talked about one of the most sobering data points that I know around the wealth gap is this simple one, and it just breaks my heart. In 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, black people in America held a little less than 1% of American wealth. In 2023, black people in America hold a little less than 1% of American wealth. Now, you want to talk about systemic wealth taking. We can go into Greenwood and Black Wall Street. We can go into what happened with 375, Paradise Valley, Black Bottom, Seneca Village in Manhattan, Rosewood, Bronzeville in Chicago. There's so many communities that were vibrant, that were creating wealth, where we own the businesses that were destroyed. Either a freeway was put through them, or they were burned down, or systemically destroyed. And so, you know, that just in and of itself, not even mentioning 400, 500 years of free labor, is a massive wealth taking. So the difficult piece of it, though, and this is what's very hard, is that once you start to peel back the layer, is that most of our assets in our community today, we hold in cash, meaning we have a mattress money mentality, because we've not been taught about ascending value asset classes. We haven't been taught. So the wealthiest people in the world hold 90% of their portfolio value in ascending value asset classes. What are those? Real estate, business ownership, blue chip stocks, 401ks, etc. Mutual funds. Those ascend in value over time, outpacing inflation. Over the past 5 years, the U.S. government has flooded our economy with cash, creating this massive inflation problem. And if you're holding cash, every time your head goes to sleep, you wake up poor the next morning. But if you're actually holding an asset that ascends in value faster than inflation, you're getting wealthier every time you wake up. That's why we're seeing the wealth gap grow. So just giving people a bunch of cash who don't know what to do with it is not going to solve the problem. It would just be coming in and going right back out, because a dollar leaves our community within 6 to 7 hours. What we have to do is create restorative justice and reparative justice policies that create ownership of businesses in the community, ownership of land, property, rental property, affordable housing that the community members own. And therefore, you're having an ascending value asset, or you say, oh, part of the reparative restorative justice is going to be offering Tesla stock, or stock in a company that ascends in value, SpaceX, etc. So it's not just about, people want to make it just about money, and it's deeper than that, because folks are incentivized to give money out because they know it's going to come back to them, and it's performative. But do they want to give out ownership licenses? Do they want to give out real land? They want to give out a 100-story apartment building? Do they want to give you shares of stock? No, because that's different. One is wealth, one is cash. And we have to be very careful about that difference.
Final question. Wayne County Community College is the lifeblood when it comes to college education here in Michigan, being just the largest urban community college and being the centerpiece of a lot of conversations here in this region. Dr. Ivory, a towering individual, a citadel of black education here in Michigan. I want you to talk about community colleges here, though, because we hear a lot about higher ed, and sometimes it's as if there's a deliberate effort to exclude the essence and the significance of community colleges in this entire discussion about reformation and taking back our communities.
Everything I have, I believe, is rooted in education for me. You know, I'm a product of a public school system that prepared me to compete at Brown University. And then that prepared me to compete at Harvard Law School and the Kennedy School of Government. And it prepared me to compete then in the world. And so I am a massive supporter of high-quality, free pre-K all the way through 16. So that means 16 means college, including community colleges, which right now are doing the work for our underfunded, underperforming high schools. They're doing the remedial work, catching young people up. I know many presidents of HBCUs that say they get students they're completely unprepared for college, so they have to do all this remedial work just to get them to college level and then try to graduate them within 2 years because they can't afford to go more than 4. Community colleges are doing so much work. I believe that we have to double down, triple down federal funding for community colleges. Community colleges are the lifeblood and access for affordable education. Community colleges, to me, are and represent everything that high school used to be. Trades, learning a tradable, movable skill. Dr. Ivory was just telling me that folks come here and they'll just take 1 or 2 classes and not even graduate yet and have employers grabbing them out for jobs. We need to be providing that access to all of our folks in our community, and we need to, and allow to do it through the community college system is one way. The infrastructure is already here, so why not triple down, quadruple down their funding so they can serve more students for free? We have to support student loan debt relief. We have to support this because to the fact that we're putting it on young people to pay for an education system that is 30x outpaced inflation is completely wrong and unfair. And so, without question, we have to support our community college systems. And that's critical. And so, let's give it up for Wayne County Community College and what they do. I'm thinking about coming here and maybe taking a class, maybe doing some plumbing and electrical, because I bought the Fisher Mansion and something goes wrong every other day. So if I don't learn some plumbing and electrical, I'm gonna be in the Poe house, because I was taking a shower this morning, it cut off on me. I was like, dang, I need to know some plumbing. So I'm coming here. They got a plumbing class? Yeah. So I'm coming.
Brian, get him enrolled as soon as we're done.
I'm taking the plumbing class. Please, I'm gonna be there.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everybody. This is wonderful. Thank you. Oh, thank you.